thought that Harry Belafonte music would make it onto the Halloween playlists of a whole generation. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1988 horror comedy, Beetlejuice. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. Beetlejuice stars Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, and Geena Davis, and was directed by Tim Burton. It tells the story of a recently deceased couple who employ the services of a bioexorcist, Beetlejuice, in an attempt to remove a new family from their old house. Horror comedy has been a cinematic thing for a century now. It's come in many different forms and varieties over the years, but there's something uniquely special about the late 80s, early 90s era of horror comedy. This is a period of time in which the genre has the humor, has some significant darkness to its horror, but also has a whole lot of weirdness. These movies are bizarre oddities, and it's just as bizarrely odd how popular some of them became. But the thing that I think is most unique about this era of horror comedy is its overlap with family and kid-oriented entertainment. Now, there were plenty of horror comedies that were specifically created for and aimed at young audiences, like Hocus Pocus, for instance, one of my all-time favorites, but there are also a lot of these movies that, for whatever reason, became childhood Halloween staples for me and many other people in my generation, despite the fact that they aren't really kids' movies. And when I say aren't really, I mean really aren't, as is the case with Beetlejuice. Somehow it managed to pull a PG rating, even after the creation of PG-13. But watching it as an adult, this is far from a kid's movie. But I know I wasn't alone in watching this frequently as a kid. I mean, they even turned it into a cartoon, which I also used to watch a lot. You could probably chalk it up to being a different time, but like I said, there's something uniquely special about this era of macabrely zany horror comedy, and about the way it helped to shape a generation of kids. There's a lot that I like and have always liked about Beetlejuice, but it's the premise that's always most drawn me to the film. The build-up, the setup, the basis of this movie's story. As part of the generation that grew up on this era of horror comedy, I was drawn to ghost stories and creepiness and oddity, always being more intrigued by it than scared. And so this film's lighthearted but still very dark portrayal of death and ghostly afterlife were really interesting to me, and remain so. The idea of this young couple being so unflinchingly accepting of the fact that they're now ghosts, but drawing the line of acceptability at the new owners of their home redecorating. There's something so creative and fun about this premise. Everything from the bureaucratic elements of the afterlife with its take-a-number system and handbook for the recently deceased, all the way to its flipped perspective on haunting, with Adam and Barbara's failed attempts at scaring the Dietzes out of their house, and their subsequent need for a bioexorcist. It's a great premise, a great setup, with a fairly incohesive story execution. Once the story gets going, the pacing's all over the place, with random time jumps, bizarre story transitions, and a sudden and rushed third act. At times, Beetlejuice feels like a string of loosely connected gags and sketches, and I always come out of each rewatch liking the first half much more than the second half. This'll go without saying to anyone who's seen the film, but Beetlejuice is a weird movie. This is definitely a contributor to the story's lack of cohesiveness, which, in my opinion, does hurt the film some. But this weirdness is also a big part of why the movie works. I mentioned the phrase before, but this is a movie that could probably be best described as zany macabre. It's so creatively bizarre, and bizarrely creative. The weird and wild set design, the strange characters, both individually and as an entertainingly mismatched ensemble, the makeup that's somehow both gruesome and colorfully cartoonish. This film is a strange mashup of ghastly artsiness and death, always opting to take the most unusual route and make the most unexpected choices. The blending of stop-motion, sandworm-filled desertscapes with ghoulish heightened reality is a different kind of weird than the decision to give the ghost story a Harry Belafonte Calypso soundtrack, but both choices are still weird. They're among the dozens, the hundreds of oddities this film is overflowing with, but all these individual elements come together to make a very unique and memorable whole. I briefly mentioned the contributing strangeness of the characters, but these characters and their associated casting choices deserve a bit more discussion, because just like the movie's overarching weirdness, they're a big part of what makes this movie, and again, the fairly incohesive story, work. Like many others, Lydia was always my favorite character as a kid. She was fittingly weird, darkly entertaining, and best of all, got to become friends with some ghosts. This character and Winona Ryder's portrayal were no doubt the primary reasons this movie was able to reach a ghoulish hand into perceived family-friendly territory. The rest of the Dietz family, and their friends, are quite the set of characters too, but as I've gotten older, I've actually grown to like Adam and Barbara possibly the most out of all of this film's characters. There's this odd mix of humor and heartbreak to their predicament, but through everything, they remain solidly likable characters. Conversely, we've of course got to talk about the titular bioexorcist, Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is no doubt the draw for many people, but this character is also, without any doubt, entirely obnoxious. He's sloppy and gross, he's crude and entirely without a filter, and he definitely feeds the meandering randomness of the sketch-driven story. But Beetlejuice and Michael Keaton's frenetic over-the-top performance also bring a whole lot of energy and undead life to the film. Although he might be among the best remembered aspects of this movie, Beetlejuice is really only in about half of the film, which I think was a good choice. He's a lot, so sparing use of the character ended up being the most effective use of him. It's weird to think about now, but Beetlejuice was only Tim Burton's second film, following his equally offbeat directorial debut, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. His second movie, and yet one so emblematic of his style and that bizarre mixture of dark whimsy that was so successful for him, especially early in his career. It's been nearly 4 decades since this movie was released. It's gone on to inspire a lot of other movies, and yet it still feels fresh and uniquely odd. And it's a movie that's still a genre staple for at least one generation of ex-kids. I'll admit that I don't like this movie quite as much as I did when I was a kid, and somehow the structural integrity of the story seems to disintegrate a little more with each adult rewatch, but it remains an October staple, and a movie whose impact far exceeds its 92-minute runtime. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number 1 is the premise. There's a lot going on in this film, and the actual story execution gets a little wild, but the basis of that story is just so fun and unique. It takes the concept of a haunted house and flips it on its head, reversing the perspective in the process. Rather than a family being haunted by some malevolent ghosts, we've got a nice ghostly couple being annoyed by the new living residents at their home. So we get to see their failed attempts at haunting, and the interesting relationships that arise with the various members of this new family. It's a very original and darkly comedic premise that ends up seeing a lot of extra detours in the full story. The second pro is what I'll call the weirdness. This is something that's closer to a mixed aspect than it is a purely positive one, but it's definitely still more pro than con. Beetlejuice is an almost indescribably weird movie. It's got a lot of what I guess you could consider normal weird to it. Dark humor, fairly quirky characters, a lighthearted bureaucratic portrayal of the afterlife, but then it has extra levels of weirdness to it. Sudden and random stop-motion sequences with gruesome faces or sandworms. Not one, but 2 dance sequences set to Harry Belafonte calypso music. A combo exorcism wedding sequence. The set design, the character reactions, the makeup. It's all so weird individually, but when combined, it's this supreme mishmash of zany oddity that somehow works. On the con side, the biggest issue is the incohesive story. This is something that really becomes a factor in the second half of the film, especially during the third act. Like I mentioned on the positive side, the premise is great, but once Beetlejuice becomes an actual character in the story, things start to meander and lose focus a bit. It's still fun, but it starts to feel more like a series of comedic sketches than it does a cohesive narrative. Con number 2 is a related offshoot, the pacing. I'm not sure if the pacing issues led to the incohesive story, the incohesiveness resulted in the pacing problems, or some combination of the two, but this does not feel like a 92-minute long movie. As with the story, the first half of this film is solid on the pacing side of things. We're introduced to all the non-Beetlejuice characters, and the primary conflicts are established. But once Beetlejuice enters the picture, the pacing gets wonky. Anytime he's on screen, things are frenetic, but then we're immediately thrown into Otho-led dialogue-heavy sequences with the Dietzes that feel like they're just dragging on and on. It's this weird stop-and-start kind of faltering pace that builds up to a very bizarre and rushed third-act climax, both in terms of the story and its degree of weirdness. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying Beetlejuice or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. I'm gonna give Beetlejuice 3.5 out of 5 paws. It has some narrative and pacing issues in the second half that are a bit difficult to overcome, but this zany and macabre horror comedy is bolstered by a fun premise, some very memorable performances, and a coffin full of incredibly weird choices that manage to work together. I would recommend Beetlejuice to anybody looking for a weird and fun horror comedy. This has become a classic of the genre, so it's one that everybody should try watching at least once, but it'll be especially enjoyed by fans of the offbeat and the macabre. Beetlejuice is peak classic Tim Burton, so fans of his style and trademark blend of darkness and whimsy are sure to have a good time. But, perhaps counterintuitively, this is also somehow a movie that people who are annoyed by Burton's typical style might have a shot at enjoying. It'll really come down to your tolerance level for weirdness. If you liked Beetlejuice, I would recommend Casper. This is definitely a slightly more family-friendly ghost comedy, but it's still got its share of darkness, plus another weird teenage girl who befriends a ghost. If you like the ideas of a bureaucratic afterlife and a failed haunting attempt, you'll want to check out A Ghost Waits. It tells the darkly and romantically comedic story of a spectral agent tasked with haunting a house and a living handyman tasked with fixing it up. With neither of them being able to fully complete their jobs thanks to the other, they're forced to come to a unique understanding. And if you liked Michael Keaton's performance, you might want to watch Night Shift. Keaton's starring debut is another comedy with a macabre tinge, though a little different than Beetlejuice's. Rather than a ghostly tale, this film is about a mismatched pair of morgue attendants who use their night shift for an unconventional money-making opportunity. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen Beetlejuice? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite ghostly comedy? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information on this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.